Was Michael Jackson with Smooth Criminal, and that was a great segue into our interview. I've got here, we're very lucky to have him here. He's a local author, and he's in our studio now. We've got Steve Shipley. Hello, Steve.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, I met Steve at 11th Seas Cafe at a book club meet, and he mentioned that he's just released a new series, and I was very excited to have him on our program. Can you tell us a bit about your background and how did you come to write the thriller series?
Sure. I never expected to be a writer at all. My background is in math and science. I never took any English courses or creative writing courses throughout my schooling. But when I started working in the IT industry, I realized that if I could not communicate to my clients in a clear and structured manner, I wouldn't be able to add much value. So I learned to write on the job, if you will, in my late 20s, early 30s. But that was all nonfiction, and that was more academic, IT research reports, consulting reports. I never thought I had a book in me. And then about 3 years ago, I was at a writers' conference with some of my wife's clients who were speaking in that. And a couple of the authors thought I had asked really good questions and sort of gave me a nudge of encouragement to give it a try. And I thought my non-fiction writing could actually improve if I tried to write a little bit more fiction. Well, the content was extremely good and clients paid a lot of money for it.
Yeah.
My harshest critic, my wife, said, pretty boring, to read type of thing. So I thought by writing fiction, it might actually improve my nonfiction.
Right.
So when I started writing the first book in the series, False Trust, 3 years ago, I had no intent whatsoever to publish the book. I was just doing it more as a exercise to try to improve my craft. And within 3 weeks, so I had 30,000 words, and found out I was absolutely passionate about the challenges of writing a crime thriller. And the reason I picked crime thriller is that was what I like to read. I like to read books by David Baldacci and Dan Silva and Lee Child and James Patterson and that. So I thought, well, I would write in that vein, and I had just a smidgen of an idea around. I was making whiskey at the time and trying to make my own whiskey and learning how to drink whiskey better.
Yeah, you've got a book out about wine appreciation.
I do. I wrote a nonfiction book, Wine Appreciation, 10 years ago.
Right.
And then I got into the crime thriller thing, and I thought, well, wonder if there's this really expensive old whiskey and it gets stolen, and that was just sort of what started. And so I had about the first third of a book, and then I figured out how to finish it.
Yeah.
And that was really what got me onto writing fiction.
That sounds really interesting. And I've heard that you've done a lot of traveling, world traveling, and you've been in high-powered, high-level corporate kind of jobs. But now you've settled here in the lovely Hunter Valley. Can you tell us what brought you here? Why did you choose here specifically?
Sure. Look, I've traveled all over the world and worked all over the world. And, you write about what you know. So a lot of my writing is based upon my corporate experiences and, what happens in the boardroom and what happens at the higher echelon of executive decision making, which isn't always in the best interest of shareholders and clients. A lot of times it's very self-serving. And I've always loved wine, especially moving to Australia. I had quite a bit of wine that I had collected.
Yeah.
And Deanna and I bought a weekender here, and we really enjoyed it in that, but we always thought we'd have a place up here as a weekender and a place in the city. And then we realized as we started to fall in love with the area and visit the wineries and all the beautiful scenery and travel from this. We thought this would be as good a base as any. And so we sold our place in the city and moved up here full time about 11 years ago.
So you got closer to the wine production, so to speak.
Right.
That sounds really great. And you've also, your books involve complex themes to do with cybersecurity, international intrigue, and the odd whiskey. You have spoken a bit about this, but maybe you could talk a bit about cybersecurity and how that's influenced your books.
Sure. Look, there's a lot of different subgenres and tropes in what they call the MST, the mystery, suspense, and thriller category of books. And my books tend to deal with intellectual property and the battle over patents, and because they can be worth up to billions of dollars. And so a lot of the motivation of the characters in my book is to really control the intellectual property, and to protect that, you have to get into computer security and protecting your assets. And so there's that constant battle between the antagonist trying to break through firewalls and the protagonist, or the hero in the book, trying to protect the company assets in that by not letting them in. So there's a good deal of battle in that, and people are quite intrigued by what they hear of as the dark web. And so a lot of my characters are sort of super smart IT folk. So that underplays a lot of the battles, if you will. It's not just a battle between human beings and with guns and RPG launchers and things like that, even though there's that type of thing. It's a battle between computer systems and the brains of the emerging evil superpowers and the governments that are trying to protect themselves.
Well, with all of that in mind, would you be able to give our listeners a brief overview of your books and your current book without giving us too many spoilers?
Sure. Look, my books all started with somebody I based somewhat on myself, which is somebody who understood the corporate world, understood how to protect company assets, understood the technology in that. A lot of books, if you read like, Lee Child or Dan Silver and that, their main characters are ex-super elite. They were the head of Mossad, in Israel, or they were a Navy SEAL, or that type of character. My main character, Blake Willis, is not like that, even though he evolves like that a bit over the course of the books. So the first book started with basically a whiskey heist, a murder, and a kidnapping. The second book really moves more into a geopolitical battle between an emerging superpower and trying to take over Australia, and Australia trying to protect that. And then the third book weaves into a priceless religious artifact theft, and a chase to try to recover the religious artifact, which is truly unique.
Is that something that's kept secret, what the actual artifact is, or can you reveal it?
No, I can reveal it. It's the St. John's Bible.
Okay.
And the St. John's Bible is a very unique project that occurred over about 20 years.
Is it a real thing? Or
it is. It's a real thing. St. John's University is a Catholic university that I attended in Collegeville, Minnesota, central Minnesota, America's heartland. And they commissioned the Queen's scribe, Daniel Jackson, in the UK, who's one of the world's best calligraphers. And they made this massive 7-volume, 1,100-page Bible. And it measures about 3 feet tall, 2 feet wide, and it was all hand calligraphied with about 14,000 images, and just truly, truly beautiful. And you wonder, why would somebody make a Bible like that? But the Bible is actually fantastic. They printed off of the original handmade copy on vellum 300 copies of what they call the Heritage Edition and 12 copies of the Apostle Edition. And the Heritage Edition sells for 180,000 US dollars.
Right.
And they've sold about 200 of the 300 yet. And, it's a limited release in that regard. And the Apostle Edition sells for $1 million.
Okay.
But they gifted one to the Pope in the Vatican.
Right.
The Carnegie Library, Andrew Carnegie's library, has bought a copy. And some private patrons have also purchased copies. There are 2 copies in Australia, one at ACU, Australia Catholic University, where we actually got to go and meet Daniel Jackson when he came and talked about it. And that was where I also got to meet the founders behind the Bible Project.
Right, so you've done some real research.
Yeah, I had a lot
on
of inside information on the project, how the Bible was made.
Yeah.
And, while they never told me what they had insured it for, this one and only copy is well protected in a, sealed vault with humidity controlled, and temperature control, to make sure that the pages don't depreciate or, decompose. And so, I thought, what would happen if somebody actually stole that Bible? And nobody actually in reality has, but so this is around the theft of that and everything it takes to try to find it again.
Okay, that's something, and it's different, I understand, from your first 2 books in the Blake Willis series. That
quite a bit. I mean, a lot of the themes are the same in terms of using, searching the dark web, using blockchain technology and forensic accounting, and having, chasing payments that have been made through shell companies and from person to person to person secretly to try to find out. But in a lot of these thrillers, chasing the money is how you find the source of the thievery.
Okay, and so you've written 3 books, and I heard on the grapevine that you were thinking about writing some more books to add to your series. Is that right?
Yeah, well, you're very well connected. Yes, that's true. The next book takes place in Cambodia and is called False Love, and has to do with the kidnapping of the Australian ambassador and why he was kidnapped and what happens from there. And then the 5th book is called False Leads, which kind of close out a couple of the characters who were introduced in book 1 and book 3. And I introduced in book 3, False Hope, a character called Robert Taylor, who is a true ex-elite, service type, a Navy SEAL type and that. And he's also known as Trucker Bob, but he can drive any sort of tank, fly any sort of helicopter, etc. And so I've got a crossover series that's going to be my Robert Taylor Trucker Bob series, because I can do a lot more with that than I can a corporate IT consultant.
That sounds really good. And now, for our aspiring writers out there, I know there are some people in the locale who aspire to write their own book. Can you give us a bit about your writing process? Any tips that you could give to those writers out there who would like to get published as well? Sure.
I guess a couple of the big things that people need to answer is, what does success mean for them? Because if you want to make a lot of money and have a sustainable career being an author, it's close to impossible, unless you get really lucky, like 50 Shades of Grey or something like that. You don't have to actually be a great writer, but you actually have to understand the market and write to market, and the type of thing that people want to read. And some people write what they call are pantsters. They basically start writing like I did book 1, and then I tried to figure out, well, geez, how does this all fit together from beginning to end? I am a plotter. I like to actually structure my story beginning to end, and once I have a plausible storyline, then I'll start writing.
Okay.
But you have to write to whatever you're comfortable with, and you have to really get into a discipline around this. I was writing when I could, so it took me. I published False Trust, my first crime thriller, in August of 2022, And that was about a decade after I had published my nonfiction book, Wine Sense, The Art of Appreciating Wine.
It took you a while to get
It took
used
me
to
a while,
fiction.
and then it took me another 2 years to publish the second book in the Blake Willis series, False Start. And the reason it did was, well, life kind of got in the way. My wife had a surgery. I was suffering long-term COVID. We were working on our consulting work and the author services business for other authors that we serve and provide editing and technical skills for and that. But I made a big switch at the end of last year, and I said, I'm going to write to a schedule.
Yeah.
And, actually, my wife said, you're going to write to schedule. If I'm going to fit you in as a client with my many other clients, we need to say...
So maybe we should be asking your wife how
Right.
you became a fiction writer.
Yeah, so anyway, she's my harshest critic, but my greatest supporter also. And so in December, I published False Start. I wrote a memoir on growing up around alcohol and alcoholics called Shadows of the Bottle, which is a bunch of stories on could I have done more to help those around me who were suffering alcoholism. And then I published the third book, False Hope, in February, just 2 weeks ago today.
Okay.
And so associated with that, all of a sudden I had published 3 books within 3 months. And the fourth book, False Love, is meant to come out at the end of May.
Okay.
So now I'm writing to schedule, and that means a lot more discipline. I try to get up, early in the morning, write for several hours. Then I might do some social media. I might work on my craft skills by, reading a book or watching some videos, and then take a nap. And then at night, I'll write another 4 or 5 or 6 hours.
That's quite a schedule.
Yeah. So that was a big switch for me, was to take on the discipline and go from writing when I can to writing to a schedule. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to compromise on the quality of a book just to get it out according to the schedule, but it means I'm actually planning the early steps to make sure I can complete them in time to deliver a good quality book at the end.
Well, thanks for sharing that with us.
Sure.
And finally, for the listeners out there who want to get a hand on the Blake Willis series and start reading through the series, and then they'll be ready when your next one comes out.
Sure.
Can you let us know or tell us where we could find those books?
Right. Well, first of all, you can always contact me, and you can just look up my website, steveshipley.com, on the internet, and that. We publish through our own imprint or publishing company called Ingot Publishing. And what that means is that the ebooks are available on Amazon Australia. You can buy a printed copy on paperback on Amazon Australia also. And we're going to have book launches in the Cessnock Library and the Maitland Library coming up that will be advertising on social media like Facebook and that. And you can also buy all 3 of my books, or actually all 5 of my books, including the 2 nonfiction books, at 11S Cafe, where
great.
we hold our book club and where we met.
Yeah. Can you just tell us all the titles of the books you've got published that people could get hold of?
Sure. In the Blake Willis series, the first one is False Trust, the second one is False Start, and the third one is False Hope. And as you can imagine, they all have to do with, can you really trust? Was a start over with new beginnings the right thing to do or not? And, are we hopeful we can ever find the Bible or not? So the fall series continues then with False Love and False Leads. My nonfiction books, Wine Sense, The Art of Appreciating Wine, and then the memoir on growing up around alcohol and alcoholism is called Shadows of the Bottle. And again, for anyone local, just go to 49 Vincent Street, and you'll be able to find the books at Sarah's nice little cafe.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Steve. It was lovely. It was delightful having you on, and I hope that maybe we can do another interview in the future when your next 2 books come out.
Yeah, that'd be great. No, thank you for having me. I always like to talking about myself and my writing.
Great. Okay. Well, next up we're going to have Steve Passfield with Timberman.